So welcome back to another episode of the Ambitious, Awakened, and Aligned podcast. I'm your host, Laurie Hawkins, and today we are diving into a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and I would believe near and dear to many leaders and women in general in their lives. We're going to talk about burnout, and specifically, we're going to dive in a little bit to especially how burnout seems to somehow be aligned with high achievement. And I'm so excited to welcome someone who has supported me in so many areas of my life and in moments where, let's say, my system has felt like it's crashed. Kristina has walked alongside me in business, in life, and now you've become such a dear friend and someone I'm so grateful to have in my life. So welcome, Kristina, from Bodywise Insights. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Laurie, thank you for having me here. It's very, very wonderful to be here. And I look forward to talking about this very, very important topic, which every woman I find tries to juggle and navigate at some point in her life. So yes, I created Bodywise Insights, and I help women learn how to listen to their internal cues. So their bodies. Your body is signaling you to listen all of the time, and we tend to override things and just keep going and going and going. And if we build the ability to listen, we actually learn a lot about ourselves. We learn how to change behavior so that it actually serves us, our businesses, and our lives much, much more. So I teach women how to do that on a one-on-one basis, as well as in my group programs. I've created some group programs for individuals I lead twice a year, as well as leading businesses and employees through these programs.
Which I've had the great pleasure of bringing Kristina in to work with some of my customers. And it's just so powerful because it's something we haven't been taught to do. We haven't actually been taught to lean into the connection of our body really in anything. We talk a lot about mindset. We talk a lot about energy even maybe, but not this alignment of mind and body. We don't realize the body is a business partner.
Yes.
It is actually our best business partner if we learn how to work with it. And that's where you've really supported me and obviously all the people you work with. I do want to say quickly too that Kristina is a doctor of naturopathic medicine. And many other things, actually. You have a lot of modalities that you have studied and really are fabulously skilled at, which support, again, myself and so many women, so many people. But we're focused on women right now. So the one thing that I believe is that we hear this word burnout and maybe we pause for a second to say, oh, maybe I'm feeling that, and then really push it away because there's this badge of honor in our business society, especially, to just keep grinding it out and keep pushing and move through it and ignore those signs. So maybe you could walk us through even what is burnout? How do we recognize it? And then maybe how do we get rid of the shame around it too? That's a lot. I'm going to volley back to you with that big thought.
Okay, so what is burnout? I mean, we can think of it in different ways. If we think of it hormonally, we see burnout as the adrenal glands, which sit on top of the kidneys. They're in charge of secreting hormones, so cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine. Those hormones help us to fight or flee from stress, from situations where we don't feel safe. And oftentimes, our lives, every single moment we live our lives, it's full of these demands on us. Whether we feel them or not, they're still happening in our bodies. And so we enact this fight-flight response. And so our adrenals are constantly trying to, and our body and as a whole is trying to balance all of the time. And if over years, decades, we do not have that ability to regulate ourselves to come back down into rest and digest, very often, even every 30 minutes. I mean, it's important for the system to come down off of that high chart. If we don't do that regularly in our lives, and often a lot of us are in this world where that's not going to be accommodated for. We just keep going because that's what's expected, but also what's familiar. We don't know any differently. And if we don't know any differently, how are we supposed to suddenly do it differently? And so we just keep going. And eventually what happens is that the physical body can't keep going anymore. So then things start to get dysregulated with cortisol. And so you wake up in the morning, perhaps you don't feel as energetic. So then you have some coffee. And you do that for 5 or 10 or 15 years. And so again, that depletes the adrenals even further. Perhaps you skip meals, that will deplete the adrenals even further. And so on and so forth until you hit this plateau where you just don't have it anymore. It's this feeling of exhaustion, out of it, foggy and fuzzy. It's sort of like this collapse stage. And it might be related to this nervous system state of freeze, but it can also just be these adrenal glands that are sort of maxed out. So I think of it hormonally for women. And also there's this nervous system piece. If we have a nervous system that is wired to freeze often, so perhaps we have had experiences in early childhood where we were overwhelmed repeatedly, then we will tend to have that pattern in our nervous systems of overwhelm repeatedly easily, because it's just a strategy it uses to survive. It worked. It made you survive when you were a child. It's going to keep working. It's going to keep making you survive. But at some point, we have consequences.
And it feels comfortable.
Exactly. Well, it's how you've always lived.
Exactly.
Even if it's unpleasant, that doesn't matter. If familiarity wins over what's pleasant and unpleasant in certain situations, if it's always how you've processed things and done things. And so we have this sort of state too, like maybe there's a state of constant, on and off freeze throughout your life. And then we don't even know any different. And then our adrenal glands can't keep up with it as well. And we tend to collapse.
I think one of the things I hear, Kristina, is especially with high achieving people, and I think this is common when it comes to that high achievement. And I'm really leaning into the conversation that it's great to be ambitious. It really is. Like I that's part of who I am. It's part of who you are.
Yes.
And so we don't want to let that go, but there's this fear that's been created that if I don't stay in that hyper state, then I'm going to lose my edge.
Right.
And then that's going to impact my ambitiousness or my high achievement. And I don't think that's true. I think it's, one of the lies we've kind of been sold or taught.
Yep.
But how do we unwrap from that?
Oof. I mean, I see all people as all these different parts put together in one. We have all these different parts. We have our ambitious part, and that can be dominating our experience for a very long time. But then if we listen to other parts that say, wait a second, I feel like I'm missing something or something's not quite right, there's sometimes those parts in us too that are yearning for something more. And if you have that, then you know that, well, that part isn't really being heard. And it doesn't mean that this ambitious part goes away just because you listen to another part.
That's so powerful.
Right? You're sharing your observation of all these different parts of you. And as you observe all these different parts of you, they can have space in your life. They can all have space in your life. I mean, things do shift and change when you start to take better care of yourself and rest more and validate other parts of you. The ambitious part maybe doesn't take over every opportunity it can.
Well, I think what I learned is by leaning into that other part, that other voice, I actually have more real energy.
Yes.
Real energy, not the coffee, not the, all those other push and grind kind of thought processes. More the I have energy available to me.
Yep.
For that ambitious, high achieving part of me.
Exactly.
Except it feels so counterintuitive when you're first starting to practice that.
Right.
When you first start to listen to that other voice, it does feel like, ooh, that's scary. I might lose this other part.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the ambitious part, feeling a little bit scared, right? Like there's another part attached to that ambition that I can't let this go. if I stop, I'm going to sleep for 50 years.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm not going to get up.
I mean, never get out of bed again.
Never get out. I'll just keep crying and crying and crying if I let the floodgates go. And so a lot of people feel this way. Oftentimes when I sit with those sorts of experiences for people, it's almost letting them have permission to let the body take as much time as it needs and give it that in terms of telling the body, imagination, like using that ability to sit with, okay, body, do I need 25 years of being in a cave and no one bothers me? Do I need that? No, I need 5 years. Okay, take 5 years. You know, and we get to imagine that or be in that experience as to what that would even be like. And when you feed the body in that way, you feed it in this subconscious sort of way, this what it really needs. You don't actually have to give it that 5 years. Then you're feeding that little part that's so scared. I'm not gonna make it back. I'm not gonna have this ambition anymore. And once you feed these parts, these nourish these little pieces of you, then they calm down. They don't have to scream. And then you see, oh, nothing fell apart. Everything's gonna be okay. Ooh, I really feel like I want to move towards this direction now and implement things in this particular way. And that's what actually leads to the most fruitful thing possible for you.
I'm so excited that you are going to be a part of the Wake the F Up festival that's coming in October. So just a little backstory is Kristina, I've been working with you now, I want to say for 5 years as a part of my beautiful wellness team. And as we dreamed up the festival, Kristina actually became a part of the advisory board, and she will be one of the vital facilitators at the festival, teaching us exactly what we're talking about. Because again, you can read a book, you can listen to a podcast, but that we're just touching the surface here today on some of the sort of aha moments, maybe just a little awakening to what Kristina has explained, kind of seeing that in yourself, or that feels like a familiar experience you've been having, and you're really looking to take it deeper, to understand more. So I'm really excited that you're going to be a part of the festival and helping women really lean into the how of this. But maybe there's, just to start, what is an inspired action or something like a little step forward people can take to dive into this for themselves between now and the festival?
Yeah. Well, one piece is, I mean, we can learn on an intellectual level, right? We can hear this podcast, we can read books, but there's this step that you can take where you move from the mind, from listening, from intellectualizing, and you do need that. We need that awareness first intellectually, and then we can bring it down into the body. The first step in all of it is noticing. So bringing awareness to what your body is trying to tell you. Most people, the moment this happens, we start to freak out because there's pain, there's discomfort, there's high charge of some kind. And right off the bat, no one knows what to do with that. We go to our usual resources. I'm going to have some wine. I'm going to have more coffee. I'm going to go to sleep.
Going to eat chocolate.
Whatever. You know, everyone has their things that have worked in the past to a degree, and then we keep doing them. And so when you notice discomfort show up, a big piece that might help you is to allow it to be there. And you might think that that's going to kill you. You know, like there's this subconscious thing that is afraid that it will wreck me if I do this. But when you actually allow it to be there just for a moment, you could put a timer on for 2 minutes, be like, fine, I'll try this out. I'll just notice what's there for 2 minutes and accept whatever is there. And then see what happens next. That's always the question you ask. You notice, you see the discomfort, the challenge, the constriction, and then you notice what happens next if you're allowing it to be there. That's the first sort of steps to recognizing what the body has been trying to share with you.
Yeah, one of the most beautiful ways that I've been able to leverage that, and you continue to work with me on, is my body's reaction to I would say things I'm not actually paying attention to. It's so subconscious.
Yes.
When I'm in that high state that isn't serving me, then I go into this inflammation. And Kristina actually has worked with me a couple of times on this, where do you feel that in your body? And it's always my face. So even, doing a podcast, and that's going to be a visual, and I wake up in the morning and all of a sudden I've got that inflamed state. And so I want to stop. I want to just freeze and not do anything. I don't want anyone to see me. And so you've really helped me sit with that and instead go into that intuitive peace with my body instead of freaking out about it or getting upset about it, which only perpetuates the problem. It's actually learning to understand what my body's trying to tell me. And so I've really appreciated that. And I'm still in baby steps of it. I'm still learning and growing every conversation we have. But I just wanted to share with our audience that it's a practice, for sure. Well, practice.
And we all have that about ourselves. If we have intensity show up, we need the witness. We need somebody there able to see other stuff show up that we can't see because we are being hijacked by this charge. Our attention is always going to be going towards what is the biggest. I mean, we're wired for that. If you're driving, you're always assessing what is the worst thing that could possibly happen in this moment.
Right.
For your safety, you're constantly doing that. And so if in the past something has occurred that was traumatic or hard, and then that shows up in present day, you're going to be highly alert to that. And so then you won't see all the other things that are underneath it or around it. And so if someone has walked the journey a little bit as well, they can start to see and point out those sorts of nuances. And then comes this beautiful part of you see that there's other things involved, and that allows new wiring, new networks to be formed. And the more that you get to do that, the more you do it on your own, right? The witness was there, kind of like the training wheels. And then the next 2 weeks from now, wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, yeah, there's that puffiness. Wow, look at that. Okay, is there fear behind it? What else is here? What else is here? And keep evolving it. It just keeps evolving. But the more that you can shed these layers, the more that I think we can be the light we're meant to be in this world in a more easier, flowy way versus the pushing, the grinding piece, which we all have to do. There's always some level of grit and push we engage with in our lives. But then we do it to a degree that we probably don't need to.
Oh, absolutely. And I think part of this ongoing back and forth perspective is that we have grown up in a, masculine dominated world. And I'm all about helping male leaders as well to really unwrap all of these parts of us. Because I think we've been really focused on how do we move more towards the feminine aspects of leadership. And I don't want to leave the masculine aspects behind. I have both. And so it's more evolving that both can be in place at the same time.
Yes.
And I think that definitely as a woman in leadership in corporate, I learned so many behaviors from that typically male-dominated. I come from a very male-dominated industry, which was telecommunications. And so, but I think in general, corporate that's just how it was built. And now we're in a new era where we're trying to shift that, except women in leadership roles have learned how to function under those.
Yeah.
So there's this perception that if I focus on my well-being, something's got to give. And so we go back into that habit of, well, yes, when when I have more time, when I achieve this next thing, when the world changes, then I can focus on my well-being.
Yeah.
Except it's so counterintuitive to what we need. So how can we help people even unwrap that piece of this is vital to your wellness and your ability to enjoy life as a human being? Really.
Yeah.
It's so vital.
I know. It's a good point because we have the systems in place.
Yes.
So these intricate systems that are in place, and you are a tiny little speck in that system. And so you can still have impact on that system as you look at yourself and what you need and support yourself in even tiny, tiny ways. I think that we should highlight the fact that you can take 2 minutes, right? It might not take a long amount of time, but it does take consistency and learning for yourself. And that will impact others. It's slow. I think systems that have been built like this are going to take a long time to shift and change, but you are one little piece. And if one little piece at a time starts shifting, we're shifting the whole system, right? And so then we get to do that too.
Even us having this conversation and knowing that if one person listens and impacts how they do things as a leader, and if, the 100 women that are going to come to the festival, that those 100 women will go back into their communities and their businesses and have that impact, then we start the ripple, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And sometimes it feels invisible.
It does.
It does, right? And we lose that sense of it being there sometimes, and that's inevitable. But then we continually get reminded, like little droplets in that pond, reminded, and eventually there's enough of a wave to create consistent change in the system. But I think that any woman that can do that for herself in any little wiggle room that she can, and sometimes, oftentimes we do it to ourselves because we think that we have to, right? I would say push yourself to say, well, I wonder if I don't have to, and what happens? Do people really get upset with me, or was that just my stuff showing up? Or did I really lose out on this, that, or the other? Or was it just completely fine? And if that happens, that everything's okay, then you just keep working towards yourself having more time, space, and peace.
I always love the perspective of the future self. Who are you becoming? And when you have the moments where you're being questioned internally or challenged internally, to really pause and say, if I'm looking 10 years out, who do I want to be, and who do I want to have been for people as a leader, as a mom, as a friend, all of it, right? And then in the moments now, I try to pause and think about that. What's that future self state? And then how do I bring that to today?
I love that, because really that's a part of you as well, right? We could think of that. That's another part that you can tap into at any moment. She lives in the future, but really she's right there urging you towards it.
And the choices I make today will either unfold her in that way or not.
Yes.
So I recognize that I have to make those choices today in order to be that future vision. And I love that, because it's practical. For those of us that sort of sit in that achievement type of state, it's a practical but really powerful way to lean into what is necessary today.
Whenever you start something new, it's going to take time to build that ability for you to ride that wave, that nervous system pattern, easier and easier next time. But even taking 30 seconds or 2 minutes, you start out small, be consistent. That's like anything, right? An exercise regime, a diet shift, a sleeping change. That's the same with these patterns of, I need rest, I need peace, I need calm in my life. Where the hell do I start? Start with 30 seconds. What's that feel like? Where do you get it in your life? Can you allow 30 seconds in? And if you can't, then you start with 10 seconds, like little tiny bits. It takes a long time, but that's okay, because in the end, we know we're going to be heading towards that future self.
Thank you.
That has more peace, calm, balance in her life, can still strive and achieve, but not gut herself for it.
And that's so powerful. Remember, even when I started meditation as a practice, and I just kept saying, I can't do that. Like, I can't, my brain won't shut down for that long. And then it was proposed to me to start with 1 minute and then go up to 5. And then now I can do an hour a day, like without even.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And has been a very amazing practice for me and my body, connecting to my body for sure.
Well, and then there's that moment that comes up as you start to get into the habit of something, and then you notice something needs to change or shift, like this meditation isn't working for me, and what's next? And you have to sit in this lull space of waiting for the next to come in. And then it gives you new vibrancy towards whatever you're practicing. That's right. This evolution, this evolving of connecting to self and connecting to what's right for you, what's needed for you, so that in the end, you're living a life that feels well lived, not just for others, not just for your business, but you've grown and through it, and you've actually been nourished by it versus drained by it.
And also just you saying that is the reminder it's a journey. We get so caught, especially achievement focused, in the destination, in the outcome, in the goal. And part of the process of working with you, especially because of my autoimmune and of different things that my body doesn't always do what my achievement focused being would like it to do. And so when I stay in that state, well, it's counterintuitive to it ever getting there. And so I've been able to separate the result from the actual practice. And I think that's so critical of that when we're on that sort of hamster wheel. It's all about where we're going, like getting there versus what are we learning along the way? Because the journey is the growth. The journey is the evolution. And the more I think that we can allow ourselves to embrace both, because sure, I like the final result of something too. That's never going to change.
Yes.
Also understanding though that the evolution of it is so important.
Well, and if you're getting those little hits of dopamine through the journey, that's what's feeding you too. That's what keeps things going versus the looking at the end result. It's so often far away. And then we just move the benchmark further away all of the time. So if you can build into your life that feeling of I'm doing what I enjoy in this moment and in this moment, this stuff I don't quite enjoy, but it also gets me where I need to go, and that's okay too. So just this understanding that I need to feel this all the way through, or else again you'll burn out.
Yeah. So it's so amazing thinking about all this. I'm going to switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
So we had been talking about hormones with women, and you said that that's one of the aspects. And then we get into our menopause or premenopausal stage as women, and a lot changes.
Yeah.
And I think a lot more shame and guilt come up because we're not prepared. We don't understand. We don't really have good education on this. And I've worked with many high-level leaders who are starting to experience more burnout at that stage.
Yeah.
And instead of thinking it might be something that is out of their control, they go directly to the what can I change? What do I need to do? How can I work harder? I don't have the energy. I'll have to hustle and grind it more.
Right.
And you shared with me that this is actually hormonal.
Yeah. There's
okay, let's talk about that.
There's physical things that happen when a woman is living a life of kind of burning that candle at both ends. So maybe she's skipping meals, she's not sleeping well, she's not exercising on and off throughout. So that's placing demand on the physical body. And so the adrenal glands, again, above those kidneys that are in charge of the stress response, they're going to be taxed over and over and over again. If we're skipping meals, if we're eating poorly, not enough protein, missing sleep, all that sort of stuff. And then here's this beautiful body that has cycled for decades, having our periods and all that comes along with that for our physical body. And then we transition into this time of sometimes it ovulates and sometimes it doesn't. And when we hit that stage, it's the adrenal glands that have to take over production of small little bits of estrogen and other hormones that come from the like the different sort of pregnenolone hormone and so on. So when we don't have those reserves and then we hit that time, then everything kind of goes a little wonky. And then we start to see all of the consequences of what menopausal symptoms look like. Hot night sweats, hot flashes, anxiety, insomnia, uh, mood swings, all kinds of things, hair falling out,
All the great
grinning
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, all of it, libido, like everything starts to go haywire. And we might think, and for some women, it's just one little thing that can show up at first, just anxiety. And you're like, it comes out of the blue and you're not sure why, but yeah, okay, your periods have been shortened, for example, for a couple of years. And now this anxiety is showing up and my sleep is a little off. That can be the beginning of your adrenals needing to take over these functions that the ovaries are like, we're done. We've done our filled the quota. It's toast, And so now there's this inability for the body to do that. And again, we hit these walls much easier at that point. So
Wow.
women experience this all the time.
It's fascinating.
And then we chalk it up to, oh my gosh, it's me. I'm failing. When really we're actually transitioning from this maidenhood, then motherhood. If we had children or not, we're in that reproductive stage. And then we get into this wisdom piece, this wise woman that's supposed to really become the teacher for others as we transition into this menopause state. We are that crone, that woman that's just supposed to sit there and people come to her for advice, come to her for support. But yet she doesn't have to give too much. It's just her, her essence that comes through. And so it is this winding down in a sense that we need to start thinking about when we transition from the active stage to this stage of, now I'm just going to receive all the gifts of others of how amazing I am and how wise I am and what I'd like to share with the world now. What do I want to, give back to the world? It's a different sort of time in life.
So in theory, if we found a way to tap into that, we actually can really show up as not just a different leader, a different person, except we don't have the tools.
Right. Yeah. And we need that time for reflection to see what can I really offer now? What can I give back in this particular?
What does that even look like? It's a whole new season. So we need the tools for that season or the wisdom of other people like yourself to help us navigate that. Because in theory, we're just looking at, again, the system. And the system is set up to, you got to push another decade, possibly for retirement.
Yes.
This whole conversation, I can't believe now, because I'm 56, I feel like every conversation is, when are you planning on retiring? And I just kind of giggle. I'm like, I don't really think of things that way. I just think of it evolving into, how am I helping people in this season? And maybe it will look different in the next season.
Right.
And that's easy for me to say because I'm not in the corporate space and I own my own business. So I get to choose what that looks like more than if I were in the corporate space still in a leadership role where, yes, it is more defined and you typically choose a time where you retire.
Right.
And yet when you're going through that as a woman, you've still got probably a good decade before that winds down or changes from a corporate leadership perspective. So
putting it into that way of thinking about it, it's like that's where the system isn't meeting us.
Right.
Biologically.
It's
not meeting us.
Right.
So we need to make those accommodations and supports for ourselves so that we meet ourselves. So we can go another 15 years.
Which is where body-wise is so important, where understanding our bodies and I say to you is they're our best business partner. If someone can really help us understand that and show us and teach us and help us align and come into harmony with our bodies. So I'm so grateful for the work that you do. And we have only touched on the surface in this conversation. So of course you're going to have to come back over and over again to keep us moving in the right direction, or in a more harmonious direction, I would say, on understanding this for ourselves as women. So any last final thoughts?
Well, as you were speaking there, I thought, wouldn't it be great to give an example of how the body is a business partner? So, I tune into my body regularly, daily, multiple times a day. And one of the recent experiences I've had is this internal experience of striving. And through my arm and through my reaching energetically of striving and noticing that I felt the striving in my body and the ineffectiveness of it. It wasn't there. Whatever I was grabbing for wasn't there. And I could imagine and see and sense that it isn't there. And then I tuned in and I thought, okay, well, where is it? where is it already? And it was actually already in the center of me. And so then I got to feel it and I didn't have to strive anymore. And then the next action item came immediately after that. I thought, okay, great. So from here, well, what do I do next? Because, you know, I would love this, I would love that. And what do I do next? And it came up and I took the step and reached out where I needed to reach out. But from a place of like reconnecting with self instead of this energy of perpetual striving. It was a really cool moment. I mean, and I have those all of the time. And that's what I support people to do, is to look within themselves as to what's not working anymore. And then what is your body going to show you and how it can actually work out for you if you listen to what's happening inside.
Yeah. Powerful example. Thank you. I think so many people will be able to resonate with that. And also as a takeaway for everyone listening, to think about something for yourself that you've experienced, like Kristina just shared, and reflect on that and notice the role that your body plays in that, and how you can more deeply connect to that so that you can continue to practice. Just continue to practice it, right? Like that's, again, working with you for many years now, I really have to go into consciousness on this. I have to purposefully carve out the time to pause, reflect, notice, ask the questions, check in with my body. It doesn't come natural for me. And I've been practicing it for a while. So I think it's just that knowingness too, that it's like going to the gym. It's choosing a practice that you have to be intentional about.
Yeah. Well, and the other piece is, though, as you start doing this work and you start doing this deeper rewiring, the stuff happens effortlessly. It does when you clear certain things, then it actually does happen more effortlessly, and you're surprised by it, right? Because you didn't reach for it, you didn't anticipate it to happen that way. But suddenly I'm drinking more water and okay, cool, that's great. Oh, apparently it's easier for me now, or whatever example you want to use. So it can happen quickly, but it's not on our agenda, you know, what we really want when we want it, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah. It's not a task on the to-do list. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, to end, I would like to ask you what ambitious, awakened, and aligned means to you.
Oh, I did not know you were going to ask
I know.
What ambitious? To me, well, ambitious is this feeling of spark of power and energy in my core. Like when I feel into ambitious, it's this felt sense of spark or fire inside. Awakened and aligned. I mean, that is both. I can see that as being one and the same. Because when you're aligned, right, to me, you're aligned to something, your purpose, right? What you're really meant to bring into this world. And so with that comes awakening, because no matter whatever, when we're living our purpose, we wake up more and more to who we're meant to be.
So cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
See, it's better to not prepare. Because then it just comes.
I love it.
Well, thank you for being here, Kristina. So excited to have you at the festival in October, and the lives that you're going to change through more conversations like this. So just thank you for being you and just showing up all the time authentically. You have no idea the power you bring into a room. I so appreciate you.
I love that. And thank you so much for our connection and our journey together. It's felt so deeply nourishing to me.
Thank you. Awesome. And to all our listeners, we will be back next week. So until then, just remain ambitious, awakened, and aligned.